Hare Krishna, welcome to this conversation on the importance of reading Srila Prabhupada's books. My name is Krishna Prem Rupa Das from ISKCON Zurich, and on behalf of the ISKCON Ministry of Education, we'll have this talk today with Navina Nirada Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for having me, Krishna Prem Rupa Prabhu, and thank you all for watching.
Navina Nirada Prabhu is originally from Switzerland. He joined ISKCON in a very early age, actually in the age of 15, joined the ashram, and he has been has been distributing books, Srila Prabhupada's books, for almost 40 years now. Certainly has been one of the most experienced and most successful book distributor in ISKCON. And he lives in Mayapur. Also, he spends a lot of time in North America. He's traveling, preaching, sharing his experience on books distribution. And just recently also completed his Bhakti Vedanta in Mayapur. So yeah, we're very grateful to have your association and hear from you about the importance of distributing books and reading them also. So maybe let's start with to hear from you about who gave you your first book, or how did you came in contact with Krishna consciousness? What was the first book you read, and how did it change your life?
Thank you. So I was going to a boarding school in Switzerland in the mountains, and one of my friends, he became interested in Krishna consciousness, so he lent me his Bhagavad Gita, but I could only look at it briefly. But I found a Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, first part, in the library of my school. So I borrowed that book and I started reading it. So that was, the Bhagavatam was really what stood out and what has made the biggest impact, the biggest difference in my life.
So the Srimad Bhagavatam was basically the first book that you read, the first
Yes.
chapter. Okay. And I mean, you joined quite early. How that happened? You had such a conviction in that early age already, or you like to tell something about that?
What can I say? Krishna has just been very kind. He has been very merciful. So I had the good fortune to come in touch with Krishna consciousness at an early age. My friend invited me to come to the Zurich temple, which I did in a spring break of 1984. And immediately devotees were very forthcoming. They were very generous. They gave me books. They gave me beads. They said, okay, this is how it works, and you just chant 4 rounds. Here are your beads. Become a vegetarian. I can say that the outreach was a little more direct back in the day. People were more direct in their approach, in their methods. I was young, I was simple, and quite open for new ways, because I felt enough dissatisfaction and discontentment with my previous experiences and state of life. So I took to Krishna consciousness quite naturally. To me, it just seemed a natural progression to whatever I was looking for in life. I wanted to meet extraordinary people. I wanted to travel the world, and I wanted to become good at what I do. So I saw that these people are exceptional because they have shared their life and their heart and their experience with me, even though I had very little to offer. I mean, as a 15-year-old, you don't have much resources or much talent or experience that you can offer. But they were willing to share whatever they had with me and to spend their time with me and shower their affection and realizations on me. So somehow I was touched by the mercy of the devotees.
And did you already immediately start with book distribution, or you had some other services that you did before?
No, I joined the movement in order to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, because it took me about 6 months to convince my mother that she allowed me to join the ashram till she signed off on me. So in the meantime, I would visit the temple twice a month and go on Harinam and down to the lake of Zurich and distribute prasadam and invitation cards. And then also I accompany devotees on book distribution. And I honestly can say that this is, besides reading Prabhupada's books, this is what had the biggest impact on me. That I realized this is a mission. There's some actual participation. I'm not just a spectator. I'm not just here to watch what's going on and be a consumer, but I can actually take part in this. So devotees allowed me to go out with them, and I was carrying their books, and they would do the talking and their interaction with the people on the door. We went door to door in Zurich, in a place that's called the Lochergut, which is one of the biggest residential complexes in the city, with hundreds and hundreds of apartments, high rises. And the devotee who I was with at that point in time, he distributed about 150 books and 3 Srimad Bhagavatam sets on that day. And I just ran down the stairs to pick up the Bhagavatam sets from the van and bring them up to hand them to him. So I got instant realization that this process, this philosophy works. It's not something abstract or something theoretical. But I could see from the reaction of the people when they received the book, how their eyes lit up and they became completely effulgent just by meeting a devotee and getting a book. And I just made the decision in my heart that I want to be part and I want to witness that exchange, that special transformational experience when you see how a new person who has been averse to Krishna, after so many lifetimes, all of a sudden gets awoken and they start turning, and then for the first time, they smile at Krishna again. And you can be there and you can witness that. So it's a very beautiful, very precious moment. And that's what kept me inspired and going forward in doing book distribution. So I joined on a Thursday and I went on traveling Sankirtan on a Sunday. So I never stayed for more than 3 days in a temple. And for the first 15 years, I just spent them on the road, living in vans, traveling all over Europe and the world. And I feel truly blessed that I was able to experience that intense reciprocation, empowerment that is coming when we try to extend ourselves and go outside of our comfort zone to share this Krishna consciousness with others.
Thank you for sharing. I think when we listen to you, we can, as you mentioned, this certain need or this opportunity to be part of a mission you mentioned, and also observing and seeing how people be a witness of seeing how people turn to Krishna. In regards to reading Prabhupada's books, it is says that when we read Prabhupada's books, we actually get a better understanding of what Prabhupada wanted us to do. It says about the mission and the vision of Prabhupada, the mood and mission of Prabhupada, we can actually absorb reading Prabhupada's books. Maybe you would like to share some experience. How do you get nourished by reading Prabhupada's books in regard to the mission that Prabhupada gave us?
Thank you. Srila Prabhupada once mentioned that his only criticism of his followers is that they do not read his books enough. He said, I have written these books not just for you, for selling, but you should actually read them. In the 7 purposes of ISKCON, in the 7th purpose, Srila Prabhupada mentions that by distributing these books, that will actually help you to fulfill the other 6 purposes that he mentioned before, which means building spiritual communities and bringing people closer together and to Krishna, etc., etc., etc. So when we read Prabhupada's books, we associate directly with the heart of Prabhupada, because Srila Prabhupada deeply meditated on these Bhaktivedanta purports. Whatever was in his heart, he put in these books. So we can directly experience Prabhupada's heart and mind by studying his books, by studying his purports. So it is actually a very intimate association that we are having with our founder Acharya. So, and it is always available. The Vani, the instruction is always available. Whereas the Vapu, it was only available for a very short time. And even those who lived during Prabhupada's time, most of them did not get that much physical time in Srila Prabhupada's presence. But if I am mindful and I organize my life in such a way that I can associate with the Vani, with Srila Prabhupada's teachings, then I have his presence as much as I want. It's practically unlimited. I can hear Prabhupada's classes, I can read his books, and then when I go out and try to implement what he asked me to do, to share this knowledge of others, then I get a very strong feeling of dependency and empowerment and inspiration that is coming forth from the very same books that I'm reading and that I'm trying to distribute. So these books are deities. These books are alive. It's like you have your worshipful Ishtadev, you know, you're doing puja to your worshipful God, form of Krishna. And there's a very strong reciprocation between the worshiper and the worshipful object, the center of affection and attention. So the more I read Prabhupada's books, the more I will recognize and realize how these books actually are alive. You know, it's not just paper and ink. It's not just some object that you put on a bookshelf and it looks very scholarly and erudite as a backdrop, because you can also just, you know, buy a poster and put that up. Or as people do, they have their, you know, their screens, their screensavers that they just put behind them. But when we actually open Prabhupada's books, we realize how these teachings come to life. Last Saturday, I was giving the talk here at the program in Cancun, Mexico. And I was speaking on the verse, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam purvakam dadhami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport, he says something very beautiful, that even if a person is in a spiritual organization, but he's not able to advance, he's not able to really progress in life. But if they're sincere and they're dedicated and they serve with love, then Krishna within their heart will guide them and will make all the arrangements so they can become successful in their life and in their devotional service. So you read one purport like that and you're like, wow, this is magic. This is just fantastic. I mean, there is hope. There is hope even for me, because sometimes it is difficult to appreciate things on an external level when we're facing our own situation or our institutional or our circumstantial challenges that we're all going through in life. But when I get to associate with Srila Prabhupada's realizations, I can realize that there is actually no obstacle, there is no shortcoming, there is no deficiency, there is only opportunity here. So that gives me great inspiration, gives me great hope. And I also am very fortunate that I travel around and I meet so many devotees who have become changed. They become affected by Srila Prabhupada's books. They have a deep appreciation for Prabhupada's books. So I can see that those devotees who are immersing themselves in Srila Prabhupada's teachings, their faith is very strong, is very firm. They're very solid. They're very deeply rooted in their Krishna consciousness. And so that is a very great inspiration for me. And also there is just really nothing else in the world that gives as much taste as sitting down with the Bhagavatam and just reading the Bhagavatam. I mean, try it out for yourself and just shut off the world, shut off the electronics, put the do not disturb sign out, go into flight mode, and just read for an hour. Just read one full chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam. I guarantee you, your life will never be the same. It's not possible to go back to the old ways. Because first of all, the first realization is, this is great. I want to have this again. I want to experience this again. So when can we do this next? Okay, tomorrow. So what's the best time? Well, for me, the best time is right when I get up. So I get up early and I read an hour Bhagavatam before I start chanting my rounds, which kind of forces you to go to bed early and get up early. So In other way, it's like a sports person, their entire life revolves around how can I be at my optimum? How can I have maximum impact? When can I read Prabhupada's books? So then you put in your quality time for study. And whenever there's not much going on, you also read in between throughout the day. In this way, we keep the spiritual sound vibration going. And there's never really a moment where we come down, where it goes flat, whenever you feel you're drifting off into mundane existence, or there's some mundane mood or topic that comes up, just pick up the Bhagavatam, read, just even if it's a few verses. There's this very beautiful verse that really keeps me going from the Bhagavatam, from the 4th canto. Yatredyante katam rishtas trishnayo prashmoyata nirvairam yatra bhuteshu nodvego yatra kaschana. And it's about the impact that the Bhagavatam has on the devotee when the devotee hears the Bhagavatam. So the translation goes that whenever pure topics of the transcendental world are discussed, the members of the audience forget all kinds of material hankerings, at least for the time being. Not only that, but they are no longer envious of one another, nor do they suffer from anxiety or fear. I don't know about you. Have you ever suffered from anxiety or fear? Or faced some material hardships, some material hankerings? So all of that goes away, at least during the time in which we hear and discuss the Bhagavatam. So to bring the Bhagavatam to the forefront, to bring it to the center stage, to put it on the main pedestal that it deserves in our life, requires an internal commitment that I make the decision that I'm going to base my life on the teachings of the Bhagavatam. Let us pause for a moment and be mindful that Prabhupada brought the Bhagavatam to America. He came with the 1st canto. And that's the book upon which he built his entire society. Our entire ISKCON movement was built on the Bhagavatam. So, and by reading the Bhagavatam, I align myself with Srila Prabhupada's mood and mission, with Srila Prabhupada's purport. I get in tune, I get in line with Srila Prabhupada's vision. And in this way, my whole life will become meaningful because Param Vijayate Sri Krishna Sankirtan, because this Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is successful because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu declared it. And he is, as Prabhupada writes in the beginning of the 1st canto, he is the living example of the Bhagavatam. He's like the person who has shown us how to live the Bhagavatam. So I have found great friendships and great inspiration and solace, great meaning and purpose. The Bhagavatam has given me life. It's given me a real purpose, a real reason to live, which otherwise I wasn't really so sure. You brought up the point, how can you know it at such a young age? I think we all come to a point where we realize that the material pursuit is not really working and it's not really satisfying. Whenever that experience comes, I think we can all, in retrospect, remember that moment when it became very evident. And then it's room for something new. And Krishna can manifest himself. Krishna svadam upagate dharma jnana divisaha kalanashtandrishamesha purunarko dunodita. Then the Bhagavatam arises and just manifests its illuminating, soothing light.
I love your point of really making the Bhagavatam the center of your life and give it the priority. Like you mentioned, in some way you already answered some of the question regard of reading technique, because you mentioned basically getting up in the morning and the first thing you do, you actually read. So that's quite impressive, and it's I think certainly a good way to start the day. And then because that shows that you give such importance to it, so you can't miss it afterwards. So thank you for sharing that one. Since you're, as I mentioned, such an experienced preacher in our movement, where do you see the connection between reading and distributing? Because as you mentioned, Prabhupada said these books are not only meant for distribution, but for reading. But how would you describe the effect of a preacher when he actually reads the books and afterwards distribute versus a person who is not really reading them?
Thank you for bringing up this very important point. Input versus output. You can only give what you got. If you don't have it, you can't give it. Otherwise, you're out there and just shooting blanks. You can go through the moves and move your mouth, but it's not really going to have impact. If I do not allow Krishna to have impact on me through the Bhagavatam, by hearing the Bhagavatam, Shrinvata Svakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyan Taksto Hya Bhadrani Vidunoti Suritsatam. If I do not undergo that experience on a daily basis, then my impact will be very minimal. I will not really have much thrust. I cannot really break through the layers of conditioning and covering. And we realize that every day when we are in the public, moving in the world, either as preachers or as book distributors or whatever it is that you're doing, and we can realize how our quality of our sadhana, the quality of our japa, the quality of our study of Prabhupada's books is correlating with how we can affect people, how much influence we have on them, how much credibility we have on them. Sometimes I go up to people and I tell them, yeah, I'm a monk. And people go like, really? Are you sure? Are you just trying to sell me something? Or how do I know what you say is true? In other words, if I'm not practicing what I preach, then I'll be a hypocrite. And I will really not have much credibility. So Krishna is empowering and using his devotees to fulfill his mission in this world. Krishna Shakti Vinana Hetara Pravartan. This movement is spread not by money or politics or just external type of arrangements, but it is actually spread through Krishna's potency, through the sincerity of purpose of the followers of Srila Prabhupada who have dedicated their lives to propagating this mission. So by living a life of inspirational sadhana, by studying Prabhupada's books every day, I become a recipient and a conduit, an instrument of this potency, of these teachings. So that even if I say simple things, like I go up to people and I ask them, how is your mind? Are you mindful or mindless? Are you here or are you everywhere? And you bring in simple concepts, like the concept of consciousness, of presence, of awareness. It touches people because they can see that it's coming from a position not just of knowledge, but of realized knowledge, in a sense that it's benevolent knowledge. It's meant to help a person to improve their situation. Do you know that dogs can hear a person's heartbeat? People know if a person is hostile or if they're actually they have a friendly intention towards them. So, in other words, if I do not practice Krishna consciousness myself, then what can easily happen is that people will simply interact with my material conditioning, and that the two false egos will simply meet, and most likely it won't be too agreeable because false ego and false ego, usually it's a no-go. It's not a match. In some cases, it might be compatible on a material level, but it will not, it's inconclusive. It won't really bring a meaningful result. But unless I lower my levels of defense and I accept the fact that I need to bathe my intellect in Prabhupada's instructions. I would like to hear the Bhagavatam. and I spend quality time with the Bhagavatam, how can I expect that I will be very effective during my outreach, or during my book distribution, or during the performance of my devotional service? I know devotees who are performing puja, devotees who are performing cooking, they have very, very elaborate rituals where they sanctify themselves through bathing, through mantras, through meditation, before they get into the presence of the Lord, or they do personal service for the Lord, because they realize, I'm dealing with Krishna. This is not something mechanical or something mundane. So sometimes we're not so much aware when we go out and we move in the world, but actually people are watching us. They're watching us, and they pick up on whether we have performed our spiritual practices. Now, somebody may challenge and say, how can you know these people are not following anything? So how would they recognize? Well, Krishna is in their heart. And sometimes you give somebody a book and the person is interested, and then they look at the book and then they look at you, and they look at the book and they look at you, and they want to check you out. They want to see, like, are you for real? Is this substantial? Do you really want me to give you a donation? How do I know that this is actually real? And then when we are helplessly trying to serve the instructions of our spiritual master, to please Srila Prabhupada, then usually Krishna in their heart says, it's okay, take it, give him something. So one time I was distributing books in Rishikesh, and I met a yoga teacher from Ukraine. He was my age, middle age. And I gave him a Bhagavad Gita. And he was very, very unimpressed. He was like, yeah, I know Bhagavad Gita. Like, what are you trying to tell me? I'm a yoga teacher. So I just backed off and gave him the space. But he was still friendly, and he was looking through the book. So I just didn't say anything. And I just said a little prayer in my heart of hearts. Krishna, if I've ever been a good boy, if I've ever done anything good, please give your mercy to this person. He needs it. Because he's a person of influence. He can touch people's lives. And after a few moments, he stopped and he looked at me. He stopped going through the book and he just looked at me and he said, I feel love coming from your heart. How much is this book? And he did not want to have a discussion. He was not ready to hear my great sermon. But Krishna, I was not able to reach him, but Krishna in his heart certainly was able to reach him. A couple of days ago, I got a text message from a yoga teacher in San Francisco. She owns a yoga studio, and I gave her Bhagavad Gita on Haight-Ashbury 4 years ago. So, and after 4 years, usually when I meet people and I give them a book and it was a nice exchange, I take their contact and then I send them a text and I say, thank you very much for your time and your sincere interest. I hope you like the book. If you ever have any questions, please do not hesitate and get back to me. And then I'll leave it at that. And it took her 4 years to get back to me. And she texted back and she said, hi Navina, who are the Krishna monks and what are your practices? And I said, well, I'm that guy who gave you the Bhagavad Gita 4 years ago. And then she wrote back, yeah, I'm teaching actually Bhagavad Gita to my yoga students. And I'm using the Gita that you gave me because I like this edition very much. So we have to be patient. When you're planting seeds, you don't know which one will fructify, when they will fructify, who will come forward. But a farmer is not insecure. A farmer goes out and he plows the land and he puts out tons of seeds, and he knows in the fall there will be harvest. Why? Because he has faith. He has faith in nature. He knows that nature is doing its bit. In a similar way, the seed of the Bhagavatam, of Prabhupada's teachings, is very potent. By traveling around, I meet people in all the places that I go to. I was just in Gainesville, Krishna House, Florida. And so many of them, always, wherever I ask this question, at least a third to half of the devotees, they got a book somewhere. And that's what brought them to Krishna consciousness. So to me, that's a great inspiration. And it also proves the point that if I want to be impactful, if I want to have thrust in my outreach, I must read every day. Because otherwise, people will notice, I will notice, and it's not good to feel dissatisfied and discontent with oneself. So please do yourself a favor and make a concentrated effort, make a plan right now after you watch this little discussion. Okay, what's the time? When I'm going to read? Because if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So have a plan. Meet the dawn with a plan. Have your book ready. Have your beads ready. Know what you're going to do. And there will be a good chance that actually you will succeed. And in building up these mini habits, then doing the projects and other things will actually become not just easier, but it will become a side effect of your sadhana. The Goswamis, they were predominantly chanting Hare Krishna, worshiping their deity, and writing literature. And as a side effect, people were drawn to them because of the potency of their spiritual practice. And they were just asking, how can I serve? What can I do to help you in your mission? I know right now it sounds like music of the future, but some glimpses of that we have all experienced. When people come up to you and they have one question only in their mind and they say, "Excuse me, sir, how can I become like you?" That's like, wow, okay, maybe I have to get I have to get serious. I have to get really solid in my own practice.
Thank you. That's very powerful. I think the listener can feel that how by personally applying and actually practicing, people will be touched, because people look for authenticity. And you in your own life, you were going deeper in study. You decided to do Bhakti Vaibhav and then Bhaktivedanta. Maybe you can share some of your experience, because it's one thing to read books on your own, but then there is a systematic study of Prabhupada's books in a group of other devotees, with teachers, with writing essays. How was that experience for you, and how did it deepen your relationship to Srila Prabhupada's books?
Yeah, thank you for bringing up that point. As I mentioned, I joined at a young age, and in the 80s, we did read. There was standard policy, depends on who was your Sankirtan leader, but people were reading regularly. Yet in the winter of 2008, 2009, I spent in Mayapur and I took Bhakti Shastri, and it's been a game changer, because I made it my main goal to just study Prabhupada's books, and to do it systematically in a group of like-minded individuals with knowledgeable, enlightened, and benevolent teachers is a life-altering experience. So I liked it, and I just stuck with it. The next winter, I started Bhakti Vaibhava, and then I just kept going. And it took me about a decade, but hey, we got time. So when you do something systematically, it's a concentrated, a consolidated effort. There's a certain type of momentum that is being created by that commitment. It's like you decide, okay, I'm going to do this Govardhan Parikrama, even if I have to crawl on my four legs, but I'm going to complete this Parikrama. So in a similar way, if we develop this tenacity that we just say, I will not stop, come whatever. And it's unfortunate that there's so many devotees who have not read the Bhagavatam, that have not read Chaitanya Charitamrita. And they've been in the movement sometimes for decades. It's quite shocking. We have done interviews around the world. Less than 10% of our own people own a full set of Prabhupada's books. And less than 10% of our own people have read all of Prabhupada's books. So this is a situation that is not really tolerable. It's not really acceptable. If I would tell Prabhupada, you know, that when I give a report to Prabhupada, that 10% of my temple has read your books, and 10% of our congregation has a set of books, I don't think Prabhupada would be impressed or pleased. So Prabhupada sacrificed his life. He gave his entire being to give us his books. He stayed up every night for several hours, and he translated not less than 6 pages every night that he was with us. So if I do not dedicate a certain amount of time every day, it means I'm really missing the boat. I'm really missing out on what's going on. I may think I'm part of this society, but I'm not really actually part of this movement, so to speak, because the movement is a mission. There's a mission. There's a very clear purpose behind it. So these study programs are available now in different locales. They're available online. It can also very easily be created by people who are sincere and they want to do it with the help of different institutes and teachers. So you can also have online study groups where you just get together and you just go and you read through the books together. And there is usually 80-20 is the best type of mix, that you have 80% reading and 20% discussion and sharing. Of course, if you're in a classroom environment, that ratio may change, but because you have done your homework and you've read the chapter before you come to class. So you have still done your 80%, and then you have the group discussion and the homework and the essays and what you were mentioning during the class. So it's a very agreeable mix. In this way, you can actually enter deep into the teachings of the Bhagavatam, because it says in the Bhagavad Gita that this knowledge should not be given to somebody who's not austere. Did you ever wonder what does that mean? Somebody who's not austere? Like on the street, it's easy. You ask people for money, that will make them austere, because it's an austerity to give money. But how do you make devotees austere? You ask them to sacrifice quality time on a daily basis. That's an austerity, right? To spend quality time. It's a commitment. And then Krishna, through this sacrifice, through this yajna, Krishna reveals himself. He actually becomes manifest. He becomes present in the association of devotees. Satatam kirtayanto maya tantaschadrdavrata namashantascha mam bhakta nityuktapasate. So when the devotees get together and they hear and chant about Krishna, Krishna manifests in that association. And I have seen that the realization that comes forth from the hearts of the devotees, old and young, knowledgeable and very new, is tremendous. It's really magnificent how Krishna does the magic, and he just appears. Like sometimes you hear in the Bhagavatam, they were doing this grand sacrifice, and all of a sudden Vishnu just appeared in the arena. And you think, like, what the heck? How does that work, right? You know, like, does he come out of the fire, or he comes in on Garuda, but you can have a similar type of experience when you perform the sacrifice of churning the Bhagavatam in the association of sincere Vaishnavas, and with a mood of service, with a spirit of humility, and Krishna manifests. And it's quite a life-changing experience. So we want each and every person to have that experience, because that's what really makes the heart full and what makes you feel like, hey, I'm in the right place. I'm doing the right thing. This process works. Otherwise, at some point, people will start drifting off or dozing off or thinking, oh, maybe there's something else, or maybe there's something higher, or maybe I need to go somewhere else. But when we actually absorb ourselves in these teachings through the systematic study, then we see how Prabhupada has given it all in his books, and it's there for the layperson, it's there for the beginner, the intermediate, the more advanced, and the most advanced devotees who are just relishing the Bhagavatam and just ecstatically cherishing the devotional ecstasies of Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you so much, Naveen Nirada Prabhu, for sharing some of your bliss that we can clearly feel through your words. I think we got a lot of amazing insights and wisdoms from you. Do you have any last message to our viewers? Because you spoke a lot about the taste, and we can see that the taste is there, and this keeps you really going. How can we overcome the obstacles for reading? Because sometimes they will have different reasons why they not get enough time, or they're tired, or they don't have a taste. Maybe any last message to how to get access to that joy, the joy of reading Prabhupada's books?
Even if you can only read one verse a day. Even in our most fierce competitive marathons, we always read a few verses. You pick up the top book that you're going to distribute, you open it up, you read one verse, and then you go. After a while, you realize that this is too good to miss out on. just like if you have Krishna Prasadam, you just don't want to miss it, right? You feel like, I need this. This is sustenance. And whatever we appreciates, and whatever we relish, it becomes so easy to share it. It becomes so natural to make other people appreciate it. So start reading today, and just never give up. Never give up. Go back to the Gita. You may say, the Bhagavad Gita, I read that book 20 years ago. Well, read it again. I tell you, it's a new book. And you will have a lot of realizations. And it's quite amazing. Sometimes we feel a little down, and you just open a book, and Prabhupada gives you the answer to your question, to your problem right there. Has this ever happened to you? Or is it just me? Like, it's right there, black and white, what I needed to hear. Because the Bhagavatam is a person. It's a deity. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, it says Krishna is very responsive. So I have seen how, if we try to associate with Prabhupada's books, and we try to serve his teachings and his movement, how Krishna takes an active role, an active interest in our life. And he becomes like the charioteer. He's guiding the chariot of our life, like he was guiding Arjuna's chariot. Because we're all trying to not just survive, but we're all trying to thrive on the battlefield of life. And of course, right now, the survival ratio is a little bigger than it's usually. But still, we're looking for that guidance. We're looking for that very close, intimate connection with Krishna. Prabhupada says amazing things like bhakti is the most congenial form of intimacy. I mean, you can frame that and put that on the wall. Bhakti is the most congenial form of intimacy. People are looking for relationships. Why is social media so big? Because people look for relationship. They look for intimacy. But Prabhupada says bhakti is the most congenial form of intimacy. And Krishna is very responsive. When Madhavendra Puri left because he felt dissatisfied, because he felt that he had not had the right attitude, Krishna personally reciprocated. And he stole sweet rice for him. And he appeared at different stages of his life to intervene and to have his devotees association. So in a similar way, when we associate with Prabhupada's books, we'll be able to appreciate how Krishna makes all these wonderful arrangements, how he sends the devotees, how he even orchestrates things through his external energy. Just like Vidura, he saw the internal and external energy of the Lord acting simultaneously in order to extricate him from his complicated situation in the palace. So then we will not see this world as something frightening or defeating or crushing, but we will actually see this is Krishna's energy and it's doing its thing. And as long as I'm trying to do Krishna's work, Krishna's bidding, it will be meaningful. So thank you for taking your time to watch this. Overcoming the obstacle, just pick up the book and read it. This is really not that difficult. Also put the books on your devices so that wherever you are, even if you don't have quality time, just read one verse. Just read. There's so many gaps. So fill the gaps with Krishna Katha. And in this way, you will see how the whole thing will actually starting to take shape. It will actually start to grow on you, where the time will come where Krishna Katha is the main thing. And everything else is just it's just the icing on the cake. It's just what happens to go on. Like the associates of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, their main thing was doing kirtan with Mahaprabhu. And by the way, some of them were kings, some of them were beggars, some of them were making sweets, some were doctors, some were administrators. But the main thing was doing Sankirtan. So if we make Sankirtan, if we make the Bhagavatam, if we make Prabhupada's books the main thing, then whatever else we do, whatever occupations, whatever other duties we have, will not be that distractive or that important. But in fact, they will become meaningful through our study of Prabhupada's books. And we'll be able to utilize our vocation and our services throughout the day to actually share our realizations. You can go up to people and just tell them what you read. I just read about Prahlad Maharaj, who was not frightened by the hostility and animosity of his father. Have you ever had people who were hostile or antagonistic to you? I mean, that's real life scenario. That's something that really speaks closely to people's lives, to their situation. So the Bhagavatam has helped me tremendously. In fact, it has made me who I am. It has guided me. It's given me purpose and meaning. I'm completely indebted to it. I just want to show my appreciation to Srila Prabhupada by studying and distributing and sharing his books with others. Also, my dear friend and brother, Brahmananda Puri Prabhu, who passed away a few days ago. He was one of the first pioneers in Russia to print Prabhupada's books. And he risked his life. He got a printing press on the black market in his house in Armenia, in Yerevan. He took out the street light and broke down the wall and put the printing press in his basement, built the wall up again, put the street light up. He printed books by himself in a time when even owning a typewriter was considered a criminal offense. And devotees were distributing these books all throughout the former Soviet Union. And through that, the entire society flourished and grew. On what? Prabhupada came to Moscow in 1971 with one Bhagavad Gita and one Easy Journey to Other Planets with Shyama Sundar Prabhu. And now there is literally hundreds of thousands of devotees and millions of books. So everything has come from one seed. So when people ask, so what's the result? What's the potency? There's Russian devotees in most of the temples around the world. In fact, they're now reviving our movement in many countries by going on Harinam and going on book distribution. So we can show our appreciation and our gratitude to Srila Prabhupada for his sacrifice and to Srila Prabhupada's disciples for their sacrifice by picking up a book and reading one verse. And then our next thought will be, okay, who can I share this with? How many people can I talk to about this? So then whatever you do during the day will become influenced from this Krishna Katha. Okay, you may be an entertainer, you may be a musician, you may be a web designer, you may be a social media star. Okay, but extract the essence of what you read and communicate it through your profession throughout the day. And you will see, all of a sudden, people will go, wow, where did you get that stuff from? I want more of that. And to me, that is the greatest contribution that Srila Prabhupada has made for entire humanity. There is a saying that if you have 1 year time, grow rice. If you have 10-year time, grow coconuts. And if you have 100 years time, grow people. So Prabhupada, as a spiritual visionary, he wrote these books as the law books for the next 10,000 years, for the golden era. So let us make plans individually and collectively how we can read Prabhupada's books every day, because a day without reading is a day wasted. If you can put your head on the pillow and at least I read one verse today, it's money in the bank that won't be taken away. Just before you go to sleep, reflect on what is that one thing that struck me today when I read Prabhupada's books. And throughout the day, try to meditate on it and try to share it with 3 people. Just tell them, this is something that I read today that really touched me. And you'll be surprised. I guarantee you, money back guarantee from this small webinar, that your quality of life will increase exponentially from today on. So thank you for your sincere interest in this topic, and thank you, Krishna Premarupa Prabhu, for doing this service and giving me the opportunity to speak on the importance of reading and studying and sharing Srila Prabhupada's books with others. I feel this is the Sankirtan movement of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. This is what keeps the movement moving forward, and this is what is solving all difficulties and all problems in life. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much, Naveen Nirada Prabhu. It was a great pleasure to listen to you and have your association.
I'm missing all your association, and I hope things are going well there.
The Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you very much.
Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama,